I've got a few comments that I want to begin with, and I'll be happy to answer any questions from the press corps as you all see fit. I want to start off with this. As week 2 of the legislative session is coming to a close, some things are becoming very apparent, and that is we have a leadership crisis in the state of Oklahoma. Not just a fiscal or financial crisis facing a $900 million budget hole, but we have a leadership crisis in the state of Oklahoma. For the last 6 or 7 years, the Republican Party, Governor Mary Fallin, Lieutenant Governor Todd Lamb, and the Republican majorities, the supermajorities in the House and the Senate, have controlled this state and have helped pass legislation after legislation that has created this financial disaster that faces our public schools, our hospitals, our prison system, our DHS system, our mental health system. This year, the governor decided to propose a series of revenue-raising measures to hopefully pull us out of the ditch that she and Lieutenant Governor Lamb and the Speaker and the Pro Tem have helped drive the state off into. But instead of looking back at the gross production tax cuts, the income tax cuts, the failure to expand Medicaid, the billions of dollars in tax credits and exemptions, the governor instead decided to raise taxes on haircuts and doctor's visits and dental visits and oil change services, raise taxes on the backs of middle-class families. Well, if that wasn't bad enough, the fact that the very day that she rolled those plans out 2 weeks ago, the President Pro Tem of the Senate was asked what parts of her tax plan he and his caucus would support, and he offered, at this point, there are none, but we'll have to take a look at them at some future date. And then today, we learned that the Lieutenant Governor, Todd Lamb, has decided to completely abandon the governor's plan to balance the budget, has left her cabinet, and abandoned the plans to work together to try to solve the crisis that he and she and the rest of the Republican majority helped create. Clearly, when the governor can't have the Lieutenant Governor, the Pro Tem of the Senate, or the Speaker of the House all on the same page when it comes to helping education, healthcare, and public safety, the state of Oklahoma not only faces a fiscal or financial crisis, but we face a dire leadership crisis. So the question that we have is, we know what the governor's plan is, raising taxes on middle-class families, and we oppose it. We know what the House Republicans' plan is. That's simply to raise cigarette taxes and hope that more money rolls in from some sort of miraculous source. Today, I guess the question needs to be posed to Lieutenant Governor Lamb. If he's going to abandon the governor and he's not going to stand with the Speaker of the House or the Pro Tem, what's his plan? We've laid out our plan, and that is to index the gross production tax to the price of oil, roll back the fiscally irresponsible income tax cuts. Let's bring our federal $900 million worth of federal money home to take care of the 1 in 5 citizens that don't have any health insurance, and let's find a way to eliminate some of these wasteful tax credits and exemptions. We've laid out our plan. Our plan is directly related to what put us in this mess, right? Their decisions. But now the question is what's Lieutenant Governor Lamb's plan? If he doesn't want to raise taxes on middle-class families like the governor, then it's time for him to step up and show leadership and demonstrate to all of us what he really wants to do. I guess what Lieutenant Governor Lamb is trying to do is trying to separate himself from Governor Fallin. It's up to him as to what tax plan he wants to offer. For a while, it looked like he would be supportive of the plan because you didn't hear anything from him. It was sort of silence of the lambs, as it were, when it came to the governor rolling out 164 brand new tax increases. He was absolutely silent for 2 weeks, and then apparently when the pressure ramped up on him and people started asking questions, he decided to come out and throw the governor under the bus. And I don't fault him for that because I don't support her tax plan either. But I don't sit on her cabinet. I haven't worked to try to lead this state with her as a lieutenant governor for the last 6 or 7 years like he has. And so the question now that has to be posed to Lieutenant Governor Lamb is, what are your solutions? And in this instance, I think it's incumbent upon the Lieutenant Governor to not just cut ribbons, but to actually step up and do something to help advance the cause for public education and health care in the state of Oklahoma. And by simply throwing the governor under the bus to give himself political deniability when it comes to ownership of a really bad tax plan, that's not leadership. Leadership is stepping up like we have done and offering up a plan to properly fund education, health care, and public safety. By Lieutenant Governor Lamb stepping down from Governor Fallin's cabinet sends one message. There's a complete lack of leadership in this building. There's a complete lack of leadership in the state of Oklahoma. When the Republican governor and the Republican lieutenant governor, the Republican president pro tem of the Senate, and the Republican Speaker of the House cannot come together on a single revenue-raising measure in order to balance the $900 million budget hole when we've known we've had a budget crisis for the last 6 years, it's just indicative of the fact that the folks in charge don't know what they're doing well enough to be able to properly fund education, health care, and public safety. We've got a leadership crisis, and the fact that the lieutenant governor has decided to throw the governor under the bus when it comes to her tax plan is just another example of that. With that being said, I do want to address the cigarette tax issue That's moving its way through appropriations this week and maybe scheduled for a vote on the House floor sometime in the next couple of weeks. I will reiterate that my caucus is not philosophically opposed to the concept of a $1.50 increase in the cigarette tax, $1.50 per pack increase in the cigarette tax. However, we've told it to the governor, we've told it to every leader involved in this budgetary process. The state of Oklahoma, our education system, our healthcare system, our correctional system is in crisis, and it's not in crisis because cigarettes are too cheap. The state of Oklahoma and our education, our kids, our healthcare system are in crisis because this governor and this Republican majority slashed revenues year after year with income tax cuts, gross production tax cuts, and tax credits and exemptions. A cigarette tax is not the sole solution to what faces Oklahoma. My caucus is willing to work with the governor, willing to work with the speaker, and willing to work with the pro tem of the Senate to find a solution to help balance this $900 million budget hole. However, a cigarette tax alone won't get it done. And so if that's their only solution is to raise taxes on folks who smoke cigarettes, then they're not going to find uniform support from my caucus to get that done. And I believe they're going to need every single one of our votes to pass that vote, to get to 76 votes. And so we're again reiterating our call to the governor and the leadership in both the House and the Senate to work with us. We want to work in a bipartisan manner to not just find a way to support the cigarette tax, but also find a way to restore the gross production tax cuts or the income tax cuts, something that'll bring real revenue to the state to help close this $900 million hole and protect children, protect those who desperately need health care, and to protect those who desperately need a strong public safety system in Oklahoma. If they run out of cigarette tax all by itself, I don't believe the Republicans have the numbers that they need to pass it, and we'll be back to where we were last year with the partisan games being played by the majority with the refusal to actually work across the aisle. My caucus is extending our hand to the Republican majority, saying we want to work with them. We've offered up our plans. We're not hiding the ball. We've told everybody in the media. We've told all of them what it is that we want, what we want to do, and why we want to do it. It's not a special project. It's because we know those cuts are what put us in this mess, and we want to restore those cuts as a way to restore funding for core services. While the legislature may appear stuck, sort of in an immovable position, there is an opportunity when it comes to indexing the gross production tax to the price of oil, or just ticking it up a couple of notches, say going from a 2% gross production tax for the first 3 years to maybe 4%. The governor is open to the idea. Leslie Osborne, the chairwoman of Appropriations in the House, is open to it. The former chairman of Appropriations, Earl Sears, is open to it. And, of course, my caucus is as well. We would rather see it indexed, but if they come to us and say, look, we're going to go from 2% to 4%, that would bring in several $100 million at the same time that we would then work with them on the cigarette tax. That would bring in another $150 to $180 million. And now you're talking about serious revenue to help backfill a $900 million hole. And so if they're willing to do that, we're willing to work with them. And I think that there is an opportunity to make that happen. And so for the voters, the citizens of Oklahoma who may be watching this now, they need to be contacting their Republican legislators and the Republican governor and asking them to work on restoring the gross production tax cuts that help to create this financial problem. The price of oil is going back up. The oil and gas companies can certainly do it. Tom Ward, who from Sandridge, and George Kaiser from Kaiser Francis Oil back several years ago admitted openly to all of us in the legislature that the gross production tax going from 7% to 2% was not a major factor in whether or not they drill oil in Oklahoma. And they told us, please use those dollars to fund education because that's more important. And this legislature instead caved to some other special interest groups within the oil and gas community and kept it at 2%. There's a real opportunity to see us move that needle upwards a couple of points to bring in significant revenue to the people of Oklahoma for their kids, for health care, and to do it by not putting it on the backs of working families like her taxes on 164 different services for middle-class families would do. I can't see any way in which a number or the vast majority or anywhere near the 164 taxes on services ever sees the light of day in this legislature. I hope all the teachers who may have read the newspaper yesterday that a series of teacher pay raise bills or potential pay raise bills got out of a Senate subcommittee, I hope they're all paying attention and understand that what's going on. There is no plan by the Republican majority to truly fund a legitimate teacher pay raise to $1,000 or to $10,000. And what you see now is simply a political game trying to win the media cycle or the news cycle for that day or that week to try to make it look as if they truly do care about teacher pay. Until they offer up a legitimate funding source for those teacher pay raises, they're not going to happen. And for the last number of years, my caucus has sat by and watched Republican member after Republican member offer up a teacher pay plan and never offered up a true source to fund it. What passed out of the Senate yesterday through a committee has no real funding mechanism to it. Today on the House floor, the House of Representatives passed in a bipartisan manner a fix to the Real ID legislation, which has been an embarrassment for this state for the last number of years, jeopardizing people that live in my district in Del City and South Oklahoma City and their ability to access Tinker Air Force Base, their ability to access an airplane to be able to go see their family and friends or to travel. The House Democrats have called for a fix for the last number of years, and it wasn't until this morning on the House floor that the Republican majority, with our help, got that bill across the finish line, and we now send it over to the Senate, and we hope that our colleagues in the Senate will take that up. But the one downside, the one negative thing that I'll talk about that happened this week deals with what has been affectionately referred to as the host bill. You know, our caucus, we've got some members of our caucus who consider themselves pro-life, some consider themselves pro-choice, and some consider themselves somewhere in between. But at the end of the day, we are tired of this legislature passing unconstitutional legislation to make a political point that will only end up costing us hundreds of thousands or potentially millions of dollars to defend in court, all to an unsuccessful end. And that legislation by Representative Humphrey from Southeast Oklahoma, we believe will do just that. Not only will it cost the state lots of money to defend in an unconstitutional bill, but it also gives us another black eye on the national stage. And we're hoping that the Speaker of the House will do the right thing. And even though that bill is now passed out of committee, that the Speaker of the House will bottle that up and not bring that to a vote on the floor. The people of Oklahoma deserve better.